We are going to be taking a look at lists. And a list is one of C#'s generic collections. It's probably one of the most widely used. And it stores data that has to have the same data type, multiple values. But unlike an array, the size is dynamic. And there's actually a lot of methods that you can use with all of the collections to add and remove items. A lot of them have methods that will sort. And so we'll be taking a look at not only how to create a list, how to add to the list, how to remove from the list, but we'll be taking a look at some of those additional methods. Now, to use a collection, they are stored in the system namespace. And so if you have using system, you will automatically pull in collections. Plus, you will pull in everything else that's in the system's namespace. So if you want to kind of narrow down what you are pulling into your program, you could just use using system.collections.generic, because that will give you access to all of the generic collections. Okay, so you can either say using system, or you can actually, spell it all out. So as I said, lists are strongly typed and they are dynamic. Because they are strongly typed, that means that you have to provide a data type. So the name that you use is list. Okay, so where we would normally say string or int, you are going to say list. And then inside these angle brackets, you have to give it the data type of the list. Okay, so this is a little different than what we've done in the past. So list is the collection, and then in the angle brackets, you give it the data type that you are going to store. Okay, and then you have to give the list a name, and a list is an object. Okay, so you give it a name. And then if you are going to actually create the list, you want to, store that in memory, you say equals new list, give it that data type again. And you do not have to put anything in the initializer list, but you do need to include the curly braces. So you can initialize a list the same way that you initialize an array, but it is not required. So this is an example. If I was going to store scores that were integers, okay, so I've used the list with the data type int in angle brackets. And then I've got score equals new list. And again, I've got to give it that data type. And then even though I'm not going to initialize anything, I do have to give it the curly braces. Okay, and here's an example of how you might do a string. Okay, so I've got list, data type is string. It's called members equals new list string. And there should be a space between the angle bracket and members. Okay, so if we put data into the initializer list, well, that is one way of getting data into your list. There are other ways of adding data as well. As I mentioned, the collections have a lot of methods that you can use. So there is an add method. There's also an insert method. So we will take a look at different ways of putting data into lists. So if you use an initializer list, the values are added in the same order as they appear in the initializer list. So lists also have to be indexed into, just like arrays, and the first value has an index of 0. So if I initialize my list, this first item has an index of 0, this has an index of 1, etc. Okay, so here I've got an integer list called score, and I have added 4 items to it. This is going to be at index 0, index 1, 2, and 3. Here I've got a members list, and I've got 4 strings that I've added. Mickey is at index 0, Minnie is at index 1, Donald's at index 2, etc. Okay, and because collections are dynamic, I can use the add method, insert method, add range, or insert range to add to the list. Okay, and it will expand my list and make it bigger. So let's take a look at the add methods. So if you use add, your items that you add are going to go to the end of the list. And the syntax for this is you take the object that you created, dot add, and then inside the parentheses, you give it the data that you want to add. And the data can be stored in a variable, in which case you put the variable name in there, or you can actually have a value right inside the parentheses. Okay, so here's an example of adding to the score list. Okay, and you can see I've just got the number 62 here. Or if I want to use a variable, I put a value into a variable like I have here. I've got temporary name equals Pete. And then you can see I'm adding to that members list using the variable. Okay, so a couple different ways you can do this, but when you use add, it goes to the end of the list. If you want items added at a specific location, you do not want them to go to the end of the list, then you use insert. Okay, so you still have to take the object, the list object that you created, dot insert, the I is capital. And now in the parentheses, you do need to give it the index number, which is the location where you want this added. And then you give it the variable name or the value that you want to add. Okay, so over here is the example. So if I did score dot insert, and then my index is a 2, okay, you have to remember that the first index number is 0. So if I say insert at 2, okay, it's going to put it after 0 and 1. So it's going to end up being the 3rd item in the list if I put it at index 2. Okay, so that means that the 3rd item in that list is going to have a value of 26. And here's another example for members. If I wanted to put something at the beginning of the list, then I have to give it an index of 0. Okay, and then it would put that name at the beginning of the list. Now, in addition to add and insert, we have add range and insert range. So as you can probably guess, this lets you add more than one. And add range adds more than one to the end of the list. Now, how do you add more than one? you actually have to create an array that is the same data type as your list. And then you take your list object dot add range, and then you just give it the name of the array. Okay, so over here, we've got list string members equals new list string. So you can see I've got 3 members. And then I am creating a little member array here. And I've initialized that. And my member array has 3 members. Now, if I want to add to my member list, I take my members list object dot add range, and in parentheses, I stick my array in there. So the result here would be, I would have Mickey, Minnie, and Donald, and then after Donald would be Daisy, Goofy, and Pluto. And we can do the same thing with numbers. So I've got my little score list here with my values, and then I've got a score array, okay, with some additional values. And to place these new values at the end of my score list, I take score, which is the name of my list, dot add range, and in the parentheses, I take my little score array and put it there, and it'll put these 3 numbers at the end. And insert range works similar. The only difference is that you are selecting the location that you want those new values inserted. Okay, so you're giving it an index and then a comma, and then you're giving it the name of the array. And it will put all those values, beginning at that index number. So how would that work? So here we've got kind of our same initial list of members, Mickey, Minnie, and Donald. We've got our new array with Daisy, Goofy, and Pluto. And so if we do members, which is our list, dot insert range, and we want the insertion to start at index 2, and that's where we're going to add our member array. So we got 0, 1, and 2. So this is where all of our new members are going to go. Okay, so Daisy, Goofy, and Pluto are going to be inserted right there at that 3rd item. So we've covered how to create a list and how all the different ways you can add to a list. Once you have the list created, you can actually sort it. You can count the number of items in the list, because you can add from the list, you can delete from the list. So it's dynamic. So you need a way to tell how many things you have in the list so we can count them. And then we can also retrieve data from a list. So to do this, we tend to use looping, especially if we're retrieving data. And the for each loop works great for that, because you don't need to give for each a size. And sometimes you don't know what the size of your list is. It's automatically going to iterate through everything. So we're going to take a look at how to use some of these methods. We'll take a look at sort and reverse and count. And we'll also take a look at our example down here of how to do some looping. So let's take a look at all of these different methods that we can use with our lists. So the sort method is going to sort your list in ascending order. And it actually is super cool. All you do is take your list name, dot sort. Okay, so if we wanted to sort the members, it'd just be members dot sort. Okay, super easy to use. If you want to sort in the reverse order, then it's just whatever the name of your list is, dot reverse. Okay? If you want to count the items in a list, it's just whatever your list name is, dot count. Okay? You can use a for loop with a list, or you can use a for each. If you're going to use a for loop, then in your condition, you are going to have the list name dot count, because you need to know the size. Okay, and for the for each, you don't need to know the size. So the for each for a list works the same way as it did for an array. Okay, so you do need the data type. Okay, you do need to give it an alias, say in, and then you're going to have it look in the name of the list. Okay, so not that much difference using the for and the for each in a list versus an array. So now we know a lot of the different methods to fully utilize our lists. What we don't really know how to do is how to remove items. And there are several methods that let you do that. Remove at, remove range, and clear. So we will take a look at all of those methods. So list removal methods. The remove command. So you can either give it a value or you can give it the index, and it will delete whatever item is there. And if you remember that the list is dynamic, so it will remove it and kind of adjust your list. So it's your list object dot remove. And again, you're just going to give it the value that it needs to look for, the value stored, or the index. Okay. And so how do you give it? I think you probably can figure out how to give it the value stored. That's pretty easy. But if you're going to give it the index, you do need to index into the list. So we don't just give it the number 4 here if we're using remove. So we have to give it the name of the list and then the brackets with the index number in it. Remove at is a little bit different. Remove at, you are only giving it the index. Okay, and so with remove at, you don't have to give it the name of the list. You've got your list object dot remove at, and then in parentheses, you just have to give it the index number. Okay, so remove at works a little bit differently than remove. Remove range, this will remove more than one. And what you need to do is give it the index number to start at, and then the number of items you want to remove. Okay, so it's the list object dot remove range. And again, the index you're going to start at, comma, number of items to remove. So this example, numbers dot remove range, is going to begin at index 3, and it's going to basically remove the item at index 3 and index 4. And this last one, clear, is going to remove everything in the list. So we take our list object dot clear, and there is nothing left. It removes everything. So let's take a look at some programming examples. So our first example kind of illustrates different ways of adding to a list. So we've created our list. Okay, we've got Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, and we've got a little temporary name here that is Pete, and we're using the add method to add Pete. Sometimes it's helpful when you are going through this to actually play computer. Okay, so we've got Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy. We're going to play computer here. Okay, and then members.add added Pete. Okay, and now we've got members.insert 0 Clarabelle. So we are now adding Clarabelle to the beginning. Right, and then we've got a little right line. The original list has members.count. So it would come back with 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 members. Okay, so that's what it would print out. Then we've got a little member array, Goofy, Pluto, Chip, and Dale, and we're using members.add range. So it's going to add them to the end. Okay, so the new list now has, so it's going to count all these guys up. 10 members. And so we've got a little loop and it's going to print every single member out. Okay, and now we are going to start removing people. So we've got members.remove. It's going to look for Pete. Okay, and so now we are going to say bye-bye to Pete. Okay, and now we've got members.remove. It is going to remove the member at index 4. So we've got index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hi, Daisy. All right, now we're going to remove a range. So we've got, starting at index 3, we're going to remove 2. So we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to remove 2. So now we're printing out a revised list, and we've got 1, 2, 3, we got 6, and we're going to print out all the members that are left. Then you can see we sort them, and we print that out. And we sort them in reverse order, and we print that out. Okay, and so here you can kind of see what it did as it ran through this. Nope, I think I did Minnie twice, but you know, one of them is Mickey. And we'll fix that. All right. Okay, so here's our revised list, and then it did the sort in the reverse. Okay, so that example showed you how to use a string list. This example kind of goes through the same thing, but it is an integer list. Okay, so again, it's going to go through the exact same methods, but using integers now. And this little program also uses the clear. So we can play computer on this. This will be kind of a fun one. Okay. So we have our new list object called score, and we've got 50, 54, 68, and 55. All righty. And then we're going to add 62. So that goes on to the end. Now we are inserting at index 2, and we're going to insert the number 26. So we've got, this is index 0, index 1, and here's index 2, and that is where we're adding number 26. Okay. And let's see, now we've got an array. And we're going to add that entire array. We are using add range, so it's going to add to the bottom. So we've got 60, 56, and 86. All right, and so now we're going to print out all these scores in the original order. Then we sort them. And then we're printing them out in the sorted order. Okay, and you can kind of look down here, the original order, then it sorts. Okay, and so at this point, it has printed them out in sorted order. And now we get to remove things. Okay, and so what it's going to do is it's going to remove a range starting at 0. But it's going to be removing them in our sorted order. So let us, I'm going to cheat here. And we'll put the sorted order in here. Okay, so it's going to remove 4 starting at position 0. So these guys are gone. Now it's going to look for value 62 and remove that one. And then it's going to give us the revised list. And we should match what it has, and we do. Okay, and now it's got score.clear, so it gets rid of all of them. And then we add back 25 and 30. Okay, and so that ends up, being our final result here, what is left. Okay, so I do think you guys are getting the hang of this, I hope. I do have another check example. And for this one, this is very similar to the array one that we looked at earlier. And so we are getting the beginning balance. In this one, we are now setting the ending balance to the beginning balance. And we are using a list. Okay, and so we're calling our list account. And you can see that we are putting our beginning balance in there. And then how many checks would you like to enter? You can see that we are retrieving the size. We've got something called temporary check that we've created. And now we've got a little loop. Please enter the check amount. We are putting the amount into the temporary check. We are taking our ending balance and we are subtracting out the temporary check. If you remember, we set the ending balance to the beginning balance. Okay, so this is how we're going to get a true ending balance. So we are subtracting out the check. And then we're taking that check value and we are adding it to our list. So our list has the beginning balance and it is going to have the value of each check that we have written. Okay, and inside here, we are calculating our ending balance. So by the time we get out of this loop, account has the beginning balance, the original beginning balance, and it's got every single check that we wrote. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're adding in the ending balance. So now account has the beginning balance, it has every single check we wrote, and it has the ending balance. Okay, and so then we are going to print out the account activity. So we're going to print out the account name, and then we are just telling them what their beginning balance was. And we know that that is at index 0. And then to print out all of the checks, okay, we know they start at index 1. So we set index to 1, and we're going to stay in here basically until we get to the second to the last. So count represents the end of our list. right? And so we are going to do one less than that because that last item in the list is our ending balance. Okay, so we are printing out each check amount. And then finally, we are going to do the ending balance. And so you can see that we are retrieving that value. And remember, count is going to be one more than our index. That's why we subtract one out.